Have you ever noticed that the harder you chase something, the more it seems to run away from you? That dream job, perfect relationship, or inner peace, the tighter you grip, the more they slip through your fingers. What if the key to getting what you truly desire is actually letting go of your attachment to it? Think about how Steve Jobs found success after being forced to let go of Apple, or how J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter only after accepting her failures. Or how Oprah Winfrey transformed her career when she stopped chasing ratings and started focusing on showcasing something meaningful. The most successful people understand a truth that sounds completely strange. Releasing your attachment often brings you exactly what you've been searching for all along. Let's find out how this counterintuitive approach can transform not just your spiritual life, but your relationships, career, and deepest ambitions. When we want something desperately, we often create the exact conditions that prevent us from having it. The Bhagavad Gita explains this psychological trap perfectly in chapter 2 verses 62 to 63, where Krishna says, "While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment to them. From attachment, desire is born. From desire, anger arises. From anger comes delusion, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down." This describes a downward spiral we've all experienced. Think about that promotion you desperately wanted. Your attachment led to anxiety, which made you perform worse in the interview, or that relationship where your fear of losing someone pushed them away, or that creative project where trying too hard led to writer's block. The cycle is strangely consistent across all areas of life. First, we become attached to a specific outcome. This attachment intensifies into craving. When obstacles appear, we become frustrated or angry. This emotional turbulence clouds our judgment. With poor judgment, we make decisions that sabotage the very thing we want. Look at social media influencers desperately chasing followers, only to seem inauthentic and lose their audience. Or investors who panic during market dips, selling at the worst possible time. Or dieters who become so obsessed with weight loss that they develop unhealthy relationships with food. But there's a crucial difference here. Bhagavad Gita isn't saying we shouldn't have desires or goals. It's highlighting the difference between healthy aspiration and destructive attachment. Aspiration energizes, attachment suffocates. Gita offers a tough solution to this universal human problem, a path of action without attachment that leads not to resignation, but to greater effectiveness and fulfillment. It's not about wanting less, it's about suffering less while potentially achieving more. A friend of mine spent years pursuing a prestigious law firm position, rehearsing interviews endlessly and networking to exhaustion. After multiple rejections, she took a break and accepted a temporary role at a non-profit just to pay bills. There, without the desperate striving, her natural legal talent shined, and ironically, she was headhunted by a better firm than any she had applied to. In chapter 2 verse 47, Krishna tells Arjuna, "You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results, and never be attached to not doing your duty." This verse introduces the concept of karma yoga, the path of action without attachment to results. It's a life-altering way of living that turns our usual way of operating upside down. But let's clear up a major misunderstanding. Non-attachment doesn't mean not caring or not trying. It doesn't mean sitting around like a couch potato or shrugging your shoulders at life. It means giving your full effort while releasing your grip on how things must turn out. Think of it like this. You plant a seed, water it, make sure it gets sunlight. You do everything in your power to help it grow. But you do not stand over it, anxiously trying to force the sprout to grow faster. You've done your part. Now you allow nature to do its part. This type of approach creates an extraordinary freedom. When you're not desperately attached to specific outcomes, you can focus entirely on the quality of your actions. You become present, your mind clears, you access flow states where your natural abilities shine through without the interference of anxiety about results. And here's the irony. This detached method often produces better results than desperate struggling. Athletes perform better when they're in the zone, rather than obsessing about winning. Entrepreneurs build more successful companies when they focus on creating value rather than chasing profits. Writers overcome blocks when they write for the joy of expression rather than worrying about critics. Look at Michael Jordan, who said, "I never looked at the consequences of missing a big shot. When you think about the consequences, you always think of a negative result." Or J.K. Rowling, who wrote her first Harry Potter book with no expectation of success. She simply followed her creative passion. Or Steve Jobs, who focused on creating insanely great products rather than just chasing market share. These successful people embody the principle Krishna taught thousands of years ago. Focus on excellent action, release attachment to results, and paradoxically, you often achieve more than those desperately chasing success. The Bhagavad Gita was thousands of years ahead of modern psychology when it described the mental state of non-attachment. In chapter 4, verse 22, Krishna explains, "Content with gain that comes by itself, transcending duality, free from envy, equal in success and failure. Even though performing actions, such a person is not bound." This perfectly describes what psychologists now call a flow state, that magical zone where you're fully engaged yet surprisingly detached from outcomes. Athletes call it being in the zone, musicians call it being in the pocket, and it represents peak human performance across all fields. Think about times when you've tried too hard. Maybe you couldn't fall asleep because you were desperately trying to, or you got tongue-tied on a date because you were overthinking every word, or you choked during a presentation because you were fixated on not making mistakes. In each case, your attachment created the very problem you were trying to avoid. Here's what happens in your brain. Attachment triggers your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response. Your body floods with stress hormones. Your frontal lobe, responsible for advanced thinking, gets hijacked by more primitive brain regions focused on survival. Your muscles tense, your breathing shallows, and your natural abilities get blocked. When you let go, the opposite happens. Your parasympathetic nervous system activates, your breathing deepens, your muscles relax, your frontal lobe comes back online. You can access your full capabilities without interference. In my own life, I experienced this principle when training for my first marathon. I became so obsessed with hitting a specific time that I developed anxiety before each training run. When an injury forced me to let go of my time goal and just focus on finishing, I not only enjoyed the process more, I actually ran faster than I'd originally hoped. So, how do you know when you're caught in unhelpful attachment? Watch for these signs. You can't stop thinking about the outcome. You feel anxious or tense about the result. You're micromanaging every detail. You're comparing yourself to others constantly. You feel a desperate need to succeed. You're afraid of what failure would mean about you. When you notice these signs, it's your cue to practice letting go. Not of the goal itself, but of your fixed attachment to exactly how and when it must happen. Let's move from philosophy to practice. How do we actually apply this wisdom of letting go in our everyday lives? The Bhagavad Gita gives us clear guidance in chapter 6, verse 4. When one is not attached to sense objects or actions, having renounced all thoughts of outcomes, then one is said to have attained yoga. This verse reminds us that true yoga isn't just about physical postures, it's about a state of being where we act with full commitment while releasing thoughts of specific outcomes. Let's see how this works in different areas of life. In relationships, notice how neediness often pushes people away while healthy independence attracts them. When you desperately need someone's approval or affection, you create pressure that suffocates connection. But when you're complete in yourself while choosing to share your life, you become magnetic. The Gita's wisdom suggests loving fully while holding lightly, caring deeply without clinging. In your career, this principle means taking inspired action without desperate attachment to results. Do excellent work because excellence matters to you, not just for promotion or praise. Make bold moves guided by purpose rather than fear. When a project fails, learn and pivot without tying your self-worth to the outcome. For creativity, letting go is essential. Writers who force ideas often face blocks, while those who create from a place of playful curiosity find inspiration flowing. The most innovative solutions often come when you step away from the problem and let your unconscious mind work. Create the conditions, then allow the process to unfold. With health and fitness, notice the difference between consistent, enjoyable habits versus obsessive tracking and anxiety. People who exercise because it feels good often maintain their routines longer than those fixated on specific weight goals. Enjoy nutritious foods rather than counting every calorie. The journey becomes sustainable when you're not desperately attached to the destination. Regarding wealth, Gita's wisdom leads to wise action without anxiety about results. Make sound investments, build skills, provide value, then release your grip on exactly how and when returns will come. This calm approach actually leads to better financial decisions than the choices you make while in a state of panic. Here are simple practices for a healthy detachment. Take 3 deep breaths before responding to challenges. Ask, will this matter in 5 years when feeling overwhelmed? Practice saying, this too shall pass during difficulties. Notice when you're holding physical tension and consciously release it. Regularly visualize releasing your goals to a higher power. You can recognize when you're operating from a place of peace rather than attachment when you feel calm yet energized, focused yet flexible, committed yet not desperate. In this state, action flows naturally without the exhausting weight of anxiety about outcomes. Beyond the psychological benefits, letting go has a deep spiritual dimension that the Bhagavad Gita addresses beautifully. In chapter 9 verse 22, Krishna makes an extraordinary promise. But those who always worship me with exclusive devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack, and I preserve what they have. This verse points to a deeper principle. When we surrender our desperate grip on control and align with a greater intelligence, we open ourselves to support and possibilities that our limited minds couldn't imagine. Think of it as aligning with the universal flow rather than constantly swimming against the current. Every spiritual tradition speaks of this, whether called divine providence, the Tao, synchronicity, or simply the natural order of things. When we let go of forcing life to conform to our ego's demands, we often find ourselves carried by currents that take us exactly where we need to go. This doesn't mean becoming passive, it means co-creating with life rather than trying to dominate it. Like a sailor who works with the wind rather than fighting against it, we learn to sense which way the greater currents are flowing and adjust our course accordingly. The stories of people who have experienced this principle are endless. The entrepreneur who surrendered a failing business model only to discover a more successful opportunity they couldn't have planned. The person who stopped desperately seeking a relationship and then met their perfect partner. The artist who gave up forcing creativity and suddenly found inspiration flowing freely. But what about the common fear? If I let go, nothing will happen. The Gita addresses this too. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning action. It means releasing attachment while still doing your part. You still sail the boat, you just stop trying to control the ocean. This requires trust. Trust that there is a wisdom greater than your limited perspective. Whether you view this as God, the universe, or simply the natural intelligence that governs all of life, the principle remains the same. Surrender doesn't lead to loss. It often leads to receiving exactly what you need, though it can come in forms you may not have expected. This week, try letting go of just one thing you've been desperately chasing. Notice what happens when you release your grip while still taking inspired action. What area of your life could benefit most from applying this principle of non-attachment? Share in the comments below. And if this video helps you see your struggles in a new light, hit that like and subscribe button to get updates on more such guides that may truly help transform your future self.